Welcome back to the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast. My name is Jeremy Devins, and this is the Friday forecast from Friday, September 8th, 2023. And we'll be looking at the new moon in Leo in Uttara Falguni, how you can best work with those energies. We'll talk about the other big transits happening this week, including Mercury going direct, celebration emoji. And we'll talk about the other stuff going on, just kind of an overview of what's been happening. I'll go through sign by sign briefly about what you can do with the new moon for your rising and moon sign. If you don't have your own Vedic chart, go to quietmindastrology.com. That's where you can get your own free Vedic birth chart. It's different than the Western astrology based on the true placements of the zodiac. And you also get a free training with that. You can also sign up for the monthly review. So quietmindastrology.com/monthly review is great to do this during the new moon, because the new moon, as many of you know, is a time to set new intentions, to sort of clear the field, plant seeds, and begin a new phase over the next month. We'll talk about what that phase might look like for you, what themes are coming up right now, how to best work with that. But all you got to do is leave an honest review on Apple Podcasts, and you get that free monthly review process based on what I've used for over a decade now, and I find it incredibly valuable. In fact, with all these retrogrades, I was recently going back over my reviews all the way back to 2010. That's when I have solid records that I've still kept, and so valuable. Just looking at all the things I did this month or that year, and sort of reflecting on when things worked really well, when things were really difficult. Usually those months I was not keeping many notes. I was just kind of stuck in the Maya and the illusion and kind of wrapped up in it, and didn't really take time to process and digest that till later. That often happens for all of us. But those months that I did take good notes, it made it very clear what things were working really well. For me, it always comes back to the basics of exercise, diet, nutrition, sleep, sunlight, social time, creative expression, working on the projects that I value. I think if we're doing all those things, we're going to feel more fulfilled and in alignment. And if you want some support in figuring out what that is for you, if you're in a transitional phase right now and you're kind of clarifying what that is, that's a good time to do a life alignment reading, which is the kind of astrology reading that I provide, which is very tailored to each individual, so it's very tailored to you and what you need. But I do have a couple limited spaces this month for that, but I will not be offering those next month because we'll be starting the next class of the Vedic Astrology Mentorship, and I'll be focusing on serving the students in there. So if you know you want a reading soon to know all the transits going on for you, the dashas you're going through, how to best work with the energies in your chart right now, that's the best place to do that in a more personalized, the most personalized thing I offer. So that's at quietmindastrology.com as well. Just click on reading and you can sign up for a reading this month with just a couple of spots available right now for that. And then after this month, there won't be any for a while. So that's the best time to get in right now for that. So, me personally, going back through my own past monthly reviews, annual reviews, and just seeing what's worked well. We've got 6 planets retrograde last month, 6 planets retrograde this month. Venus, Mercury, Jupiter. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you see a lot of those listed here. Neptune, Pluto, Saturn, Uranus, all the outer planets retrograde right now. So that means it's a time of going back over what's worked well in the past, reviewing, learning from it, slowing down, and not necessarily starting new things. Maybe there's things in the past that have worked well you want to go back to, things you want to complete from the past. But starting new stuff, it's there's a lot of roadblocks, limits, obstacles, delays, setbacks, challenges with this. And any of those things that do come up are just an opportunity to look within, to slow down, not need to rush ahead, not need to go all into something new, but to look at what's not working and clean it up, change those things, let things go. There's a necessary sort of ego death with this kind of energy right now that can be painful. There can be some grief with it. And I mentioned last week experiencing 2 actual losses of significant people in my life, which at this point, I'm 37 now, it has not happened too many times where I've lost people close to me. In my childhood I did, and then my grandma a few years ago. But this was kind of significant for me. I felt it a lot and been processing it still. A childhood friend and my uncle, who was like a father figure in some ways to me because I didn't have a biological father in my life. And those two losses, really feeling that myself. And with all these retrogrades, I think a lot of themes of losses right now for a lot of people and letting go of things. And in that, there's a necessary grief, a necessary processing of the transition. That phase has ended. That's the end of that story. And you're in a new chapter of life now. And right now it involves a lot of reflection, introspection, looking back over things. So any new things coming up are actually just reminders to go back over old things, to look back. If there's some new person in your life, some sudden new romantic interest, the purpose of that relationship might not be you're going to marry this person. It might be that this person is a mirror for you and you're going to learn about yourself through this connection. Some new business opportunity comes up. It might not be that this is the thing that is going to be your new life purpose forever, but it may be that it gives you some perspective on what you do value in your work and purpose and what kind of work you really do want to be doing. Some opportunity to move may come up, and it's actually not about necessarily moving, but about what you value in your home and where you want to be living. So we'll talk about that in the new moon as well, as this is a time of new beginnings, with the caveat that it's this time of going back over things, cleaning things up, clearing out the past. I've spent a whole day this week just cleaning up old notes and spreadsheets and files, and that's something I kind of plan for with the Mercury retrogrades, because we have these 3 or 4 times a year. I let things pile up, and then the Mercury retrograde time, I clean them up. I think that's a good strategy to work with it. Feels like it works well for me, a nice natural cycle of expansion and contraction, getting messy, cleaning up, getting messy, cleaning up. As a musician, my past life, this life, I know what that's like, the creative process, just lots of ideas, and then you clean it up later, and then you end up with a finished song. And that's sort of the artistic approach of life, of letting things get messy and then cleaning it up and then getting a blank slate, which will come around the 15th of this month, sort of blank slate, and then you move forward, and now you can create again as everything moves direct. Well, it starts to move direct. Mercury goes direct on around the 15th. And we'll talk about that this week for the transits. So, lots going on right now. A lot of people I talk to feeling the slowdowns, feeling the WTF about life, and just wanting some perspective. But spiritually, it's a wonderful time. Materially, egotistically, it is a challenging time. It is a time where the things you're holding on to, if you hold on to them too firmly, the universe will show you where it's no, that's not exactly it. You're going to have to let that go. And the more you resist, the more it persists, the more difficult and painful it is. So, ease your grip a little bit and clean up the past stuff, create space for the new stuff. As we move into the eclipse season next month, this is the month of cleaning up, clearing out, creating space to move into this major new portal of next month. Eclipses are the big turning points of the year, every 6 months, where we make these big decisions of what next? What do we value? What are we moving towards? What's the next phase of life all about? The eclipses are really those big decision points. Amidst all the other big transits, those are big portals, big shifts in energy. I feel like, if you study quantum physics enough, you see about how we have these choice points and they branch out in different universes. That's the quantum physics. It's like you decided to listen to this podcast, and that created a branch in the space-time continuum, and now you're in this particular reality. And there's another version of you that didn't listen to this podcast, that made a whole series of other decisions that created another reality. That's the quantum physics view of the universe. It's kind of conservative view of things, actually. Not that crazy or far-fetched. But I think the eclipses, particular, are the most powerful ones of the year. And that's coming up. And I think it's good to go into that with a clear head, clear perspective, clear vision, kind of clearing out the clutter, the cobwebs, the worry, the doubt, the insecurities, the fears, all these things that can make it difficult to make those decisions and make it hard to see clearly. Now is the time to clear that up, clean that up. Therapy, healing work, introspection. And, it may feel a bit challenging with all the retrogrades, but if we're going within, if we're going back over things, it's probably going to go pretty well. If we're trying to start new stuff, it's probably going to feel more difficult, like we're swimming upstream. So keep that in mind as we go through this week ahead. And now let's talk about the transits happening this week, how you can work with them, and then we'll go into finally the sign-by-sign horoscopes with the new moon in Leo. So first of all, on September 13th, we have the sun moving into Uttara Phalguni nakshatra in the sign of Leo and moving to Virgo towards the end of that transit. 14 days here, 2 weeks, to the next 2 weeks from September 13th. So we have sun here. Sun is a planet that represents our vitality, our confidence, our power, our creativity. Think of the sun in the solar system, this giant ball of fire. Everything revolves around in our solar system. It's leading the way of the planets. And it is where you have leadership capacity, wherever the sun is in your chart. If the sun's in your first house, you're a natural leader of yourself, self-motivated. If the sun's in your 10th house, you're a natural leader in career, in politics. Great. Very good signifactor for fame and success and wealth, etc. So the sun is your power, and it's in Leo, its own sign, where it is very powerful. And Uttara Phalguni, which is often a sign associated with great wealth and success. Very powerful leaders have this nakshatra strong in their chart. So wherever this is, look where the sun is in your chart. Look where the transit is. And wherever Leo is, the number 5 in your chart, that's where the sun is right now. Improve leadership opportunities in this area of your life. Increased charisma and popularity in this area of your life. Enhanced creative inspiration in this area of your life. What area am I talking about? If you don't know the houses and their meanings, go back to the archives about the houses. Did a whole series on that years ago. Need to update that at some point. I will go deeper into that in the mentorship and the one-on-one course, of course. But the sun in Leo, wherever that house is, you might have increased creative inspiration at this time, heightened generosity, and strengthened determination, ability to get stuff done at this time over these 2 weeks. On the negative side, there's always positive, negative, and neutral expressions of everything, just like every cell in your body has a proton, electron, and neutron. Everything in the macrocosm has a positive, negative, and neutral potential. We get to choose which ones we focus on, and it doesn't always feel like we have choice. Sometimes we get really caught into the Maya and the illusion, but we always do have choice. And what I encourage in this podcast is coming back to that place of choice and seeing the potentials. It could go left or right. We have the choice of how to work with it. So this, on the negative side, could lead to stubbornness, tendencies toward arrogance, potential overindulgence in pleasures, occasional impulsiveness, a strong desire for recognition and admiration that leads to some suffering and struggle. And if those things are coming up, we just look to the positive expression and try to bring out more of that energy. So keep that in mind over the next 2 weeks as you're working with this particular transit on top of everything else. Now, I'm going to pause here and just touch on this topic of some of you may be listening to every week, and I hear talk about all these transits, like which ones really matter. Well, it depends on your birth chart, and if we do a reading, we can go into that in more detail. But for example, if Sun is your Atmakaraka, the Sun transits are going to be more significant. If Leo is very dominant in your chart, if the Sun is very dominant in your chart, the Sun transits are going to be more dominant. For example, in my chart in particular, Mercury is the most dominant planet, has a huge influence over all the houses, especially the main 4 houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses. So if you have a planet that's most dominant, ruling over those houses in particular, that's going to have a strong influence. Or if you have an exalted planet, like Sun in Aries is exalted, it's going to have a strong influence. If it's debilitated, it's going to tend towards the more negative side, so it's got to take extra attention to bring out the positive influence. Right, so it goes very deep, very fast, right? I wish it was simpler. I wish it was just, well, you're just an Aries, so you're going to do this. It would be nice if astrology actually was that simple, But there's not just 12 types of people in the universe. There's over 8 billion people. There are billions of variables in a birth chart. So it's not that simple. And it does take a little bit of depth and nuance because we are deep, nuanced people. So I've given you the deeper insights here. It would be great. I'd probably be more popular if I just focused on the sun signs and made it very easy for everybody. But it is deeper because we are deeper people. So to know which ones to focus on, look what signs, what planets are most dominant and influential in your chart. Those ones are going to be more influential. Those are the ones to really pay attention to. And as a general rule, the bigger long-term transits are the most important. And even more important than that are the dashas that you're going through, because that's very specific to you. Very few people in the world are going through the same dasha in the same way that you are. So look at your dasha. We go through that in detail in the life alignment reading. Look at the transits over your chart. That's also in the reading that we do. But you can do this as you follow along. If you've been following for a while, you know how to do this, overlaying the transits over your chart. I teach this in the 101 course and in the mentorship, of course. But that's the relatively short answer of what do you even focus on? Do all of these transits matter equally? No. Which ones matter the most? Well, the ones that intuitively stick out and the ones that fall into the categories I just mentioned. Dominant planets, dominant signs, your Atma Karaka, your most highest degree planet, your dashas you're going through, those planets, and then depending on the transits land for you in your chart. You've got transits over your 12th house. That's pretty powerful, pretty significant. Transits over your 1st, 7th, or 10th, those are also very powerful. So things to consider here. Now, let's move along. The new moon in Uttara Phalguni in Leo on Thursday, September 14th. So new moon, often a time of new beginnings. The moon is black. This is a great time to plant literal seeds. Throughout history and agriculture, this is the most favorable time to plant seeds. Tends to produce more fruits. So literally planting seeds, but metaphorically planting seeds of intention as well. Now, all these retrogrades slow that down, but over this next month, this new lunar cycle, consider what you want to put attention into, where you want to draw your attention and energy. So you may have new opportunities and beginnings in leadership opportunities. Opportunities where you get to stand out and shine and show off your gifts and your charisma. Again, look where Leo is in your chart. That will help you understand this. For example, for Virgo ascendants, Leo's in your 12th house. You may have new leadership opportunities in remote places, in foreign concepts, in time in solitude, in retreat spaces, in spaces of letting go. You may be seen as more of a leader in those areas. That's very specific just for Virgo ascendants, just to give an example. We'll talk about all of the signs in a little bit. You may have creative inspiration for new projects. Ideally, projects that you started in the past, you're going back to. You may have opportunities for philanthropic initiatives, charity, volunteering. You may have renewed determination to approach something against something that's from the past, though. There's potential for stubbornness in initiating change, tendencies toward arrogance to watch out for. The moon is here just like the sun is here, as mentioned for the previous interpretation. So a lot of the same energies, but more on an emotional level rather than a soul level. There's a risk of overindulgence here, especially mentally overindulging in negative emotions. And there's occasional impulsivity here and a strong desire for recognition that can come with this on the negative side. We'll go in more detail in that in just a moment. And then the final transit for this week, cue the confetti. It is Mercury direct in Purva Phalguni in Leo. If you're watching the video, you see all three of those, Moon, Mercury, and Sun, all in the sign of Leo. So lots of lessons right now about our authority, about our power, about our recognition among communities, a lot of ego lessons about our pride, where we are holding on. I love the quote, many of you know from the Bible, the pride goeth before the fall. Right, so that's the way I interpret this, is that we are humbled by the universe before we lose things. And we can do that in a conscious, intentional way where we drop our ego and humble ourselves. And that fall is more of a stepping down rather than a dramatic descent. So the pride goeth before the fall. And that can be humiliation, or it can be humility, right? It can be a sense of major loss and falling down, or it can be a sense of letting go and stepping down. So powerful lessons here with this transit. And I think people in power, in roles of authority and leadership, may be humbled and need to step down, or maybe sort of put into perspective, and their ego humbled in some way. Or that can, again, be an intentional letting go. The way I see these transits after many years of studies, like 18 years now, thousands of case studies of doing this work, it's potential energy. It's never to say like this is absolutely going to happen. It is like this is a potential, and here are the most likely outcomes, positive, negative, and neutral, and we have choice of influence on those. But checking in with your pride, and particularly around your communication now, talking about Mercury direct. So Mercury's been retrograde for the 3 weeks leading up to this. We got a whole week still left with this. If you're listening to this on Fridays, it goes live on the Friday forecast. But on September 15th, Mercury will go direct, and that means it's actually going to be retracing the space of the sky that it's been over the last 3 weeks. It goes back for 3 weeks, then it goes forward for 3 weeks. Then we're going into new territory with Mercury. So it's really a whole 6-week cycle of going back over things you said, miscommunications, misunderstandings, unresolved issues, lessons that you've learned in the past that you need to relearn. Mercury in Sanskrit is buddhi, buddhi meaning intellect, similar to where we get the word Buddha, which means the awakened one. So through our intelligence, we create an awakening of awareness that we must go through these mishaps, misfortunes, miscommunications, misunderstandings to clarify what we really stand for, what we really want to say. And maybe some difficulties of expressing yourself, of saying the thing that needs to be said over the past couple weeks leading up to this. But now it starts to get a little easier to have those conversations. You need to have those conversations. You need to address those things. They can no longer be unsaid, unresolved, unspoken. They must be spoken. They must be addressed. And while I'm at it, I'm not a Christian, but I love all religions. And in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word created the universe. In the Vedic tradition, which I'm much more aligned with personally, the beginning was Om, sound of all creation that still pervades all the universe. It may be the Schumann resonance that the Earth vibrates at 5.6 hertz, this low frequency, the sound of Om, that's said to be the nada japa, the always pervading sound. All that to say, our word creates our reality. If you look at it from the chakras perspective, coming down through the crown, divine inspiration, through the voice, our vocalization of that inspiration, down to the heart, our expression of love, through the core, our expression of our will and our actions, through the sacral, our expression and connection with others, through the roots, our bringing manifestations into reality. It comes down through divine inspiration, of expression, through the chakras. So inspiration to manifestation. As you speak, so it shall be. Again, lots of things like that in the Bible. Over and over again, Jesus asks people, what do you want? I'll perform miracles, but you got to ask me, what do you want? Then I can do it. So it's got to come from that place of, yeah, you can have anything you want. You can have miracles in your life, but you got to communicate it. You got to ask for it. If you don't ask for it, it doesn't go from inspiration into manifestation on the horizontal plane of the interpersonal world. So, all that to say, hopefully I didn't lose anybody here. Mercury direct in Purva Falguni, time for clear and effective communication, taking your inspiration into vocalization, into manifestation. Ideally from things from your past, things that you look back on and said, that is what I want more of, that is what I align with, that is what I want to express in the universe, and now I'm going to put those thoughts into words, into action. A time where you can be more persuasive in your speech and communication. A time where you can be more creative and artistic in your expression. You may have successful negotiations. If there's important negotiations you need to have after September 15th, this is the time to do it. Intellectually, you may feel more confident, able to express yourself. Now, there's a potential for arrogance in communication, the same Leo issues as mentioned before. Potential to overindulge in debate. Beware of the internet forums where people are so opinionated, so vile sometimes because we're hiding behind text. It's a very interesting time to live in where we have this instant text communication we did not have throughout history. You go back and look at the kind of letters people wrote throughout history, they're so thoughtful, and it's very different than modern text-based communication. But when we have face-to-face conversations, the conversations are very different, right? So beware of a tendency to overindulge in debate, conflict, things like this online. Impulsive decision-making could be a risk here. Desire for immediate recognition and validation. Stubbornness and intellectual pursuits. Just play it cool. Just chill out, you know. The Leo energy, the hot-headed kind of intense side of this is potential here. That's not all Leo is, though. That's not, that's a stereotype. That's just one expression. But overall, this can be a powerful communicative time. That's why I'm excited to host this free live workshop on Saturday, September 16th. About 30 minutes in, and I'm finally talking about this, but I am stoked for it. It's going to be really cool. If you want to go deeper into your astrology studies, September 16th, mark your calendar. Sign up on the link in the show notes. quietmindastrology.com/mentorship is where you can join the wait list. If you want to know about astrology more in depth, you want to learn how to read your chart, understand transits, just go deeper into immersion in astrology. This is my favorite, most in-depth, most detailed program. I just showed it to somebody who was like curious about it. I wanted to get her feedback, like, hey, you're interested in learning astrology. I want to just, hear how you think of this program. Because it's the 4th time I'll be running this mentorship program. And I want to get some perspective from somebody who's totally new to it. And make sure it still resonates with people who are totally new, because it's grown massively. Hundreds of videos, and they're now hours and hours and hours of training. And she was just blown away. Like, wow, you have this, you have that. Before she saw it, I asked her all these questions, like, what do you want in a training? What would you want to learn about astrology? Listed everything she asked, and I was like, great. I answer all of those questions in the program, so check it out. Let me know what you think. So I'll be talking about that program. If you're wanting to learn astrology, that is the best offer that I have. That is the place to do it. And I'll be talking all about it, previewing it, and giving you some lessons and things you can learn and apply to your life, and apply astrology better to your life right away next week. And if you're not able to join live, you'll get the replay, of course. But the way to sign up right now, quietmindastrology.com/mentorship. More news on that coming up soon. But with Mercury going direct, with all this starting to move towards the eclipse season next month, with new potential, a new portal in your life where astrology can be this huge anchor into reality and this connection to the spiritual. I like to think of this concept of divine alignment. One of my teachers, Vanessa, would talk about. So we are rooted down into the earth and open through the crown into the universe. So that's the astrology as above, and then the practical everyday action down below. As above, so below. So that's what we'll be talking about in the free live training next week. Super excited about this. Only doing it one more time this year. So if you want to learn astrology more in depth, apply it to your life, better understand the transits, and just really know what the F I'm talking about here on the podcast and what the F is happening with all the planets every week, that is the place to go. That's why I created this podcast, because that's where I was many years ago. Like, what the F is happening with the transits? Why is this happening in my life? How do I make sense of this? and going to my astrologer, asking all these questions, and wanting to make sense of it. So I created this podcast for myself first, because there was not a Vedic astrology podcast at the time. And then I created this mentorship, again, for what I wished existed, because I had to answer all these questions of like, okay, how do you learn the planets? How do you learn the signs? How do you learn the houses? And make it as easy as possible. So that's coming up very soon. Mark your calendars, sign up for the wait list, and you'll get more details soon. Now, let's talk about the sign-by-sign transits. Again, you want to know your Vedic rising and moon sign. Listen to both, not just one, because this gives you a very clear perspective of what's going on over the next month, the new lunar cycle that you're working with. Especially for women, more synced up with the moon typically than men. Men typically more synced up with the sun and the solar cycle. But for women especially, you can really feel this shift of the lunar cycle, especially for Cancer risings and moons, really synced up with the moon. But for everybody, knowing the new moon and the energies present is a great way to know when to start things, when to begin things, when to plant seeds of new intention, and what specifically, how do you work with it? That's what we're going to talk about here right now. If you don't have your free birth chart, go to quietmindastrology.com, get your free birth chart, watch the free training about how to read your chart. And now let's look at each rising and moon sign. If you're watching the video, I'll show it on screen. But if you're listening, I will explain it so clear that you do not need to see the visuals. So first of all, we're going to look at the Aries ascendant and moon. This new moon is happening in your 5th house, a time for new creative pursuits, new creative projects. If you have a romantic partner in your life, good time to go on dates, do something romantic, and create a new level of romance over the next 28 days in this lunar cycle. If you have children, good time to connect with your kids in a new way, go deeper into your connection with them, more quality time with your kids. But great transit for you, great potential for new creative insights, new luck, new fortune, new opportunities. Overall, a very auspicious transit and a good time to be bold, creative, and take risks. For Taurus, ascendant, and moon, this new moon is happening over your 4th house, an opportunity and time to make your home more of your sanctuary, your sovereignty, your place that you feel empowered and at home and at peace. A good time to enjoy time at home, but beware of overindulging in food and pleasures and just like hanging out in bed. But if there's something you want to bring new into your home, maybe a new renovation, improvement, new quality in your home, good time to do that. And if there's something you want to start new in your home, maybe look at a new home, maybe you want to move or make some new addition to your home, this is a good time for that. New vehicles, new property as well, worth exploring at this time, especially if there are things from the past that you want to explore. And there's important conversations you need to have with your mother, or if you are a mother with your children, this can be a time where you go back over those, address those things, and have a new, fresh start in that relationship. For Gemini ascendants and moons, this new moon is happening over your 3rd house. If there's a new skill you want to learn, especially around communication, this is a favorable time to do that. For me, I'm going deeper into my Spanish studies as a Gemini moon myself. That's how I'll be working with this transit. And that's something I've learned in the past in high school, but want to improve upon and go deeper back into with all the retrogrades. Perfect for that kind of thing. A skill you've learned in the past, but you want to go deeper into, and it's specifically around communication because Mercury's here as well. And if there's some short distance travel in the cards for you, that could be favorable as well. Some errands around town. But a good time for beginning new skills around communication and really any new skill that you want to go deeper in that you've had in the past. For Cancer ascendant and moon, this new moon is happening over your 2nd house, marking a new beginning over the next 28 days in your family and home life, and anything to do with shared assets, family home values, things you need to talk about with family members, things that have been swept under the rug that need to be brought out into communication and talked about. Can be very favorable, but beware not to get hot-headed, too emotional, too dramatic about this, because it can be a little sensitive as well with all the Leo energy, where you might become arrogant, harsh, brash about it. But overall, this can be very favorable if you are addressing family issues that need to be handled. And if you are in some position of leadership, matriarchy, patriarchal, family sort of leadership, mother, father sort of role in the family, things that need to be addressed to take care of the family are favorable at this time. For Leo, Ascendant, and Moon, this new moon is happening over your first house, like a new sense of self, like a new beginning for yourself. Over the next month, you find this sense of what's possible. You might want to explore this new perspective. Like, you might feel like you are in a new phase of life. Like, wow, who are you now? What is possible? What do you want to create now? This is an opportunity to have a bit of a blank slate, plant seeds of new intentions, explore new possibilities. It may seem a little uncertain and unknown, but that's okay. It's a good time to explore, to try things out, to be in the sense of not having the answers, sort of living in the mystery, not overthinking it, not over-intellectualizing it. But there may be some things from the past you go back over, conversations that have been unresolved that need to be addressed, and through that, you can have a greater sense of clarity and sense of self from this transit. For Virgo, Ascendant, and Moon, this new moon is happening over your 12th house. Great time for some introspection, some time in solitude, but there may be some emotional grief, some emotional sadness, some sense of loss of ability to communicate and emote and express yourself. This can be a bit sad with Sun in Leo here in the 12th house, a sense of loss of vitality, of enthusiasm, of confidence, self-esteem that can come with this transit. But that's going to let up pretty quickly because this Sun and Moon are going to move pretty quickly here. But over this next 28 days, there's a big spiritual lesson here of sort of healthy sense of ego death, of losing yourself in a positive sense, so you can better find yourself as the Sun moves on to the Ascendant in Virgo over the next month, just a few days away. So really, you're actually at the tail of this sense of loss and grief, but it's going to move forward and you're going to feel a greater sense of self and confidence coming back as Sun moves to Virgo next week. For Libra, Ascendant, and Moon, this new moon is happening over your 11th house, a time for new beginnings and opportunities in friendships. Good time to go out, socialize, get around friends, community, events, and meet some people. Plant some seeds of new intentions of what kind of groups you want to be a part of, what kind of people you want to be around, what environments you want to be in, and you can find new opportunities here. Maybe old communities you were part of in the past that you go back to, but overall, very favorable time. You may find new opportunities around wealth, finances, and earnings and income here from this next 28 days. Scorpio, Ascendant, and Moon. In the 10th house, you've got a new moon happening. Wonderful time for new career opportunities. Very favorable for exploring what you want to do in career. Sun being in your 10th house over the last month has been very favorable for being in the spotlight, more finding new opportunities, getting new recognition, and more confidence in your work. And this is going to move on next month to get more income, more resources, more recognition. Overall, quite a favorable time for you over the next month as you explore what's present, what's current, what do you want to do in your career. You can set seeds of new intention right now and really explore new opportunities right now. Go back to things you've talked about in the past, conversations that need to happen with your boss, employers, or employees or customers, and through that you can find huge opportunities, especially if you're in business or sales for yourself. Maybe some customers you haven't talked to or reached out to in a while. Just send an email, reach out, check in. There could be huge business opportunities right under the surface for you. Just got to go back, look back a little deeper, and you'll find them. For Sagittarius, Ascendant, and Moon, this transit of the new moon is happening over your 9th house. Very favorable placement here, where you have an opportunity to learn new skills, especially things that you're going back to from the past, like old educational paths, old spiritual paths you want to go deeper into, old philosophy books, old teachers you go back to. Now is a renewed sense of possibility, renewed sense of education. It's going to feel like new possibilities of, wow, there's so much to learn, and it can feel really exciting and interesting and lead to a lot of fortunate circumstances and great teachers in your life. And you may want to go deeper into higher education at this time. Very favorable for travel if that's in the cards for you. physical travel, or exploring different cultures, different philosophies and ideas. Overall, just wonderful, positive month ahead for you. Make the most of it and explore possibilities. The only possible downside is thinking that education or higher education is like everything, it's more about like how you apply that knowledge than just like learning for learning's sake. Capricorn ascendant and moon. This new moon is over your 8th house. Powerful time for new beginnings. You've had some interesting transits recently and some interesting challenges recently, but this gives you a sense of new beginnings, new potential. What do you want to create now? This can be hugely transformational. This is one of the most fertile transits for new beginnings, and you are in sort of the early butterfly phase. So from caterpillar to goo, you're kind of in that goo phase of metamorphosis and transformation over the next month, where there's a lot of possibility, lots of exploration deeply into introspection, possibly a sense of loss of self you've been experiencing that's going to ease up in the next month for sure, and you're going to move into new possibilities, new potential, more fortune, potentially good travels. But this is just amazing on a spiritual path, but difficult if you're not on a spiritual path. If you're listening to this podcast, good. This transit's great. Anyone else not listening to this podcast who's Capricorn ascendant or moon, it can be tough. It can be a sense of challenge, obstacles, loss of self. But overall, this is wonderful if you're on a spiritual path. Just see it all as a lesson in growth. And the next month can be hugely, hugely transformational. Potential ego death, potential spiritual gain. Aquarius rising and moon. This new moon is happening over your 7th house in Leo. There can be too much attention on your partner. Too much attention that you lose yourself. And a lot of communication, a lot of energy on the other person, a lot of energy going into shared resources over the next month, that you want to be careful and not lose yourself in that. Stay connected, stay grounded, stay centered in yourself. With Saturn in the 1st house, it's teaching you boundaries over the next 2 years still. It's teaching you to know this balance of self and other. Right now, planting new seeds of how you want to show up in relationship, what you really want in relationship. That could be under examination. Take some time in introspection, some time in quiet and introspection to clarify what you really want in partnership, romantically, in business, in commerce, and if you're in the market and you're in sales or marketing or business, what you really want, how you really want to show up, where you really feel at your best, at your strongest, at your most confident, so that you can show up from a new perspective over the next month. This can be hugely transformational. This is a big transit for you. So take the time to pause, reflect, look within, and get clear on what you really want in relationship. This could be a quick process, just maybe 10 minutes of meditation, asking yourself, what do I want in relationship? And write it down. And come from that place of clarity, of really setting that intention. Finally, for Pisces rising and moon, this is over your 6th house of your daily routines. Time to start new routines, new habits. Be careful of taking on new debts, of things that might feel like too much. There's potential for taking on too much, becoming a little too confident, overextending yourself. But overall, this can be a favorable transit for you. And a great time to start new health routines, create a new debt plan to get out of debt or pay off debts, and a potential for creating new habits in your life. And I've talked about the book Atomic Habits. I love that one. It's great 6th house, kind of new beginnings, new moon and 6th house kind of energy. Good book, it's a good resource to look at for creating habits that really support you and serve your longer, bigger picture goals over the next month. So that is our look at all of the rising and moon signs for this new moon in Uttara Phalguni in Leo over the next month, but especially on September 14th as you set those intentions. Again, go to quietmindastrology.com, get your free birth chart, sign up for free weekly horoscopes, leave a review of the podcast to get the free monthly review process. Highly recommend that as the new moon approaches this week. Great way to work with that energy. and sign up for the free live event coming up on Saturday, September 16th. If you want to go deeper into your astrology studies, apply it better to your life, understand how to apply this stuff. The best way to learn any topic is to learn how to teach it, to learn it so well that you could teach it to a friend. So somebody asks you, what's the first house about? What's the seventh house about? You could answer them. And if you can do that, you know astrology very well. And that's the kind of stuff I teach in the mentorship program, in the free workshop. It's much easier and more accessible than you think, because I spent many years like, I'm not learning anything. There were so many years where I was like, what is he talking about? What does that mean? I am not getting this. My trainings with my teacher, I would do like practice readings, and they'd say, nope, that's not true. Nope, that's wrong. Nope, you're way off here. So that was me over 10 years ago when I was really in my studies, still like many years into my studies, giving wrong predictions, making mistakes. So I really got determined of like, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm going to figure out how to make sense of this. I'm going to be able to make accurate predictions. And after much trial and error, I've been able to do that, and it still blows my mind. People go through this program, and within 3 months, usually quicker, they are pulling up charts of complete strangers, live in readings, and that person is like, yep. They're getting everything right. So what took me many years, I'm able to help my students do it in just a few weeks. I'm very proud of this. All the Leo planets, I'll toot my own horn a little bit, because it's what I wished existed. It's like if somebody handed me this 17 years ago, it would have saved me many years of trial and error and struggle and confusion. And it works, you know. It makes astrology very easy to learn. You won't find it in a book. You won't find it anywhere else. You won't find it in the podcast because it takes actual practice, right? We gotta be live on Zoom, me talking to you. That's why it's a mentorship. We work together. I walk you through it. I test you on the spot. I put you on the spot, which is not as scary as it sounds because it's just crazy how people pick this up so quickly. But it takes a little practice. It takes some guidance, but it's actually very doable. Then you look at your own chart, and that's where it's like super valuable. So you look at your own chart. You look at what's going on with my career. Am I in the right career? Should I make this decision? Because life is just full of decisions. Astrology is about learning how to make better decisions. Yoga clears out the body. That's why I teach yoga and quiet mind yoga. It removes all the tensions, impurities, toxins from the body so we can feel better and act better. Astrology clears out the mind and the spirit. So yoga is the body and mind. Astrology is the spirit and the mind, so that we can connect to the spirit, connect to the subtle energies more clearly and know how to work with them. So you can look at your chart and say, am I making the right career decision? Well, I've got this planet in the 10th house. I've got this transit going on right now. That makes this the perfect time to do X, Y, or Z. And you can make clearer decisions because life is full of decisions every day. We're making thousands of decisions. We're thinking thousands of thoughts. Most of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday. Most of those decisions are on autopilot. So a lot of the work is about making clearer decisions, creating better habits, and creating clearer insights through observing the stars, observing astrology. And as I live out here in Mexico now and watch the stars at night, it's so clear. The Venus right now is so freaking bright in the morning. You cannot miss it. And when the skies are clear, the stars are so clear, the planets are so clear, you can't miss it. You can't miss these energies. In the cities, you get detached from it, but out in nature, it's so obvious. You watch the patterns, you watch the skies move, just like it's been watched for thousands of years by our ancestors. You see the patterns, you see the energies playing out in real time on the material plane, in the world around us. It's very evident. And then you learn the patterns, and you learn how to work with it. Now you're living in alignment. Now you're not swimming uphill. I just met someone last week. It's like obstacle, obstacle, obstacle. She's on these travels, and just like this happened, and that happened, and that happened. And when we are constantly swimming upstream, constantly hitting obstacles, it's a great time to slow down and look at the transits and see what's out of alignment here. Sometimes those lessons are necessary but the struggling is optional, right? Pain is inevitable, but suffering and struggling is optional. And when we see the patterns, it becomes so clear. Just like with COVID and all this stuff, in 2020, everyone's like, oh, the sky's falling, the world's going to end. But you look at the astrology, it's like 2.5 years, we're going to have this COVID stuff going on. It's going to let up. You can go back to the history in my podcast when it started. I said, hopefully it'll ease up when Saturn goes retrograde, but this could be as long as the whole 2.5 year cycle, and it ended up being that. That potential is what played out because of all these other factors. But when we see the big picture, we see, okay, 2.5 years, government restrictions, government's extremely influential, delays, setbacks, obstacles all around the world, increased government influence, all that stuff of Saturn and Capricorn with Jupiter debilitated and Pluto and all this. But you look at the big picture and you see the patterns. Now it's more of just like a wait and see. No longer this like sky is falling, oh my God, and all the news cycles. It's like everything's so dramatic and so fast and so worrisome. But you just zoom out. It's like, oh, you're just going through your sati, you're just going through your Saturn return, or you're just going through a 19-year dasha. You zoom out, puts it in perspective, and you see the themes, you see the opportunities. Now you've got the power of the stream behind you, swimming downstream with the current, working with the universe rather than against it. And that is why I'm here. Especially a moment that happened in 2008 I've talked about is just like car accidents, getting all these obstacles after obstacles. And so I'm like, what's going on here? And then I look to astrology. It's like, oh, all these planets retrograde. It's going through the eclipse. All this is happening. Now it's like perspective, opportunity. How do I want to work with these energies rather than feel like I'm swimming upstream and life is hard and nothing's working out? Woe is me. Help me get out of my depression. Help me get into yoga and meditation and see the opportunities, see the possibilities. And no longer see it as like, it's, oh, this terrible thing is happening. Mercury retrograde ain't no thing. It's not that big of a deal. It's just slow down, go back over things. Saturn retrograde, it's not a big problem. Slow down, go back over structures, systems, and habits. So hopefully this podcast gives you some perspective. And if you want those tools, I love sharing them. I love applying them to my life. I love knowing this exists. We have this resource right at our fingertips. We just need to know how to put it into use and perspective. That's what I'll be teaching next week. If you want that, come get it. Sign up for the waitlist. quietmindastrology.com/mentorship. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. And look forward to sharing more with you soon on the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast.